Hey, you might be that business person, that entrepreneur, that real estate investor in which you have a proven system, okay? And you understand that if you happen to flood this proven system with more cash, more capital, you will be able to scale to the next level. So if you're interested in learning how you can get your hands on additional working capital, investment capital, then keep watching this, for I have a few tips in store for you. All right, so what I want to do is just share with you my personal journey and several steps that I've taken to be able to get funding. So here's the first step. The first step is you have to take an assessment of where you are today. All right, so when I first applied for business funding many moons ago, I didn't have the prettiest credit. I didn't have the credibility for my business either to get funding, because there's two types of ways you can get funding. There's corporate credit, and then there's business credit. Corporate credit involves if you happen to have a proven business in which you can leverage it to get funding independent of your personal credit, meaning you have tax returns for the past 2 years or more, business tax returns, that's what I'm referring to, not personal, but business tax returns. If you happen to have, let's say, merchant account statements, bank account statements for your business, if you also have an 80 payday score, which is similar to a 720 credit score for your personal credit, but for your business credit. Let's say you're registered for 411. Let's say you have the credibility. Then in that situation, you can leverage corporate credit. But if you're like me starting out, I didn't have a business that was up and running. In fact, I was actually trying to start my real estate investment career, but I needed the investment capital. Okay, so I couldn't go the corporate credit route in the beginning. So then I had to entertain business funding. So when I took my assessment, I realized that in order to get business funding, I do have to leverage my personal credit, because this is how business funding companies think. They think like this: if this person doesn't have a proven track record in their business by not able to provide the full documentation I just outlined a few seconds ago, then I'll be willing to give them funding in one condition. As long as we take a look at their personal credit, and their personal credit is actually pretty good, because they think this way, the business credit card companies. If this person is prudent in managing his or her own personal finances, then more than likely that'll correlate into their business. Because if you're faithful with the few, you'll be faithful with much. Makes sense, correct? So I realized I had to leverage my personal credit, and I took a look at my personal credit, and it wasn't all that pretty. I have to admit, I had a few collections, a few charge-offs, a few late pays. My debt utilization, meaning how much debt I had charged my credit cards, was well over 30%. I wasn't the ideal person for business funding, but I did the assessment anyway. And I was presented with two options. Option A, that I can actually receive up to $50,000 in funding if I got my credit cleaned up. Got the collections, the charge-off removes, got rid of the late pays I had within the past 24 months, and pay down some debt to 30% or lower. Or option B, I can, fingers crossed, apply for funding and actually get up to $10,000 with my credit being as it is, without any changes to my credit, meaning getting $10,000 even though I had this collection of charge-off, late pays, and debt utilization. So I decided to go with option B. Why? Because of the old saying, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, right? So sure, I can repair my credit. Who knows how long it will take, weeks, months even, to be able to get funding. Sure, I would definitely want to do that route. Don't get me wrong. I'm not just going to just neglect my credit. But if I have a chance to get funding today, as I am today, why not, right? I'd rather get the money now, sooner, right, than much later. So I applied for funding, and I received 2 business funding cards. One with M&T Bank, another with Bank of America. $5,000 with M&T Bank, $1,000 from Bank of America. So I called Bank of America and I shared with them the script. Hey, you guys gave me $1,000. I need this business credit card for my operating expenses and increase my marketing. And I can't do anything with $1,000. I need to talk to your supervisor. I got the supervisor on the phone, convinced them to increase my limit to $5,000. So within a 20-minute phone call, you know how Bank of America is, you got to enter in your credit card details, they got to transfer you to the other department, put you on hold. So within 20 minutes, I increased my limit from $1,000 to $5,000. So in all, I received $10,000 in funding as I stood today with those blemishes on my credit. And so that's the first step, is take an assessment. So after I got my hands on this business funding, $10,000, I wondered, what should I do next? And this brings me to the second step that I took. This was my personal journey. Once I got the $10,000, sure, I could have used that funding to go towards my business ventures, right? As I mentioned, real estate investing, but I did not, because I realized my debt utilization on my personal credit card was way too high. So what I did strategically is that I transferred the debt from my personal credit cards to my business credit cards, the whole $10,000. So that $10,000 wasn't used for any business purpose except to reduce my personal debt to credit ratio. And so by doing that balance transfer, based upon the amount of debt I had charged to my credit cards at the time, it reduced my credit card utilization below 30%. So then I applied for another round of funding, and guess what? I ended up getting $17,000. So I got additional capital from the simple fact of just paying down the debt. So that's my second step. If you have the financial means to do so, you want to be able to improve your credit by improving your debt to credit ratio. So I transfer the debt. And so by doing that, it improved my debt utilization. So that's one way. Get rid of the debt utilization by paying it off or transferring to another credit card. The second way, if you have the means to do so, is just, if you have the leave for gab, that's what I mean, request a credit line increase, just like I did with Bank of America, right? So you can do the same thing. If you have a credit card that's somewhat maxed out, just see if you can increase the limit. Or if you have another credit card that is not maxed out, so you increase the limit there and then transfer the debt from that other card to that card. All right, now the third step I did was this. I foreign filed my company, because being that I lived in a particular state, I think I was in New Jersey during that time, so shout out to all my New Jerseyans, if that's the right word for it. But I lived in New Jersey, and so I applied for business at LLC in New Jersey, and I got funding in Jersey. And so I was tapping my local market to get funding. But I realized there are other lenders out there who are portfolio lenders, meaning they lend out their own portfolio, local banks, community banks, regional banks, in which they will be happy to provide you with funding as long as you have a business entity in that state. So what I did is I took my existing entity and I did what's called a foreign file. I went to, let's say, the state of Florida, because they're lender friendly, and I just researched on Google how to foreign file your company in the state of Florida, did some slight research, found an application I had to complete, maybe it was $100 or less, did that, and voila, my entity was now foreign filed in the state of Florida. And I did this across multiple states. Okay, so I was in New Jersey, I was in Georgia, also in Pennsylvania, and New York. And so I began to tap into those markets to get additional funding, because I now had a presence in that state. Because that's a hidden gem, tackling and tapping into the small, local, regional community banks to get access to funding. All right, so that wasn't enough. So I had one business entity that was foreign filed in multiple states, and I was targeting local, small community banks, regional banks to get access to funding. But what I decided to do as well was create a brand new entity, a new business entity, in which I used that brand new entity to do the same steps that I just did with my other business entity. So that way I can get funding, not just for one business, but for another business. All right, and you can just create the other entity. It could be consulting, it could be property management, whatever it is. Just make sure that the business entities that you create to leverage funding doesn't have a high-risk business involved with it, such as credit repair, real estate investing. Even if you might be getting funding to fund those businesses, banks perceive it as risky. So you want to be extremely careful in regard to how you name your entity. So you can just name it consulting, or you can just name it something services, right? You can just say, if your initials are JPH, you can just say JPH services. Who knows? JPH consulting. Who cares, right? If you're doing real estate investing, just label it as maybe property management, because at the end of the day, if you're using that funding to acquire properties, more than likely, you're going to have to do something with managing those properties, whether you're managing yourself or you're managing a property manager. So either way, it's still legit, okay? But that's what you want to do. You want to be careful of that business name as well. So my next step is this. So being that I had these two different entities in which I was applying this process to get funding, I made sure that this process was repeatable. So I just went to Google Calendar, and I set up a calendar invite that alarms me every 6 months on the dot to apply for funding for both entities. So that way I don't have to think about it, I don't have to keep it on top of mind, but as soon as I get the notification, okay, voila, it's time for me to repeat the same process of inquiring to what additional banks, business credit card companies, these lending institutions, what additional lending institutions that I can tap into to get more funding from both of these entities, whether it's the local, small, community, regional banks, or whether it's the big banks, as I mentioned, the Bank of Americas, the Wells Fargos, the Citibanks, and so forth. So I was taking a two-pronged approach. As I mentioned, with my first round of funding, I received a credit card from a small local community bank, M&T Bank. Also received some from Provident Bank. You probably never heard of these banks because these were local small banks in my area, in my backyard, right? So I would tap into that, Fulton Bank, but then I also tapped into the major banks too. The Wells Fargos, the Citicards, the Bank of Americas, the Chase Banks, and so forth. And so I will repeat this process without fail to be able to raise my capital. Now, the last and final tip and step that I've taken, I'd like to share with you. And again, guys, this is all my journey, right? Your journey may be a little bit different. You might have good credit, you might not have good credit. You might want to use your funding for a business venture, online business. You might want to use it for real estate investing. You might have a ton of local banks in your backyard, or your backyard may not be lender friendly. Whatever the case may be, you can take some gems from my journey and apply it. And do you have any other comments of how others can receive funding? Just drop it in the comment below. But let's get into the final step. The way I was able to go through this entire journey, this is the last and most important step, was because I had a coach. I had a coach named John, still my coach to this day. In my opinion, this dude is a nerd, right? When it comes to getting funded. He uses a system, the algorithm, the whole 9 yards. It is marvelous, right? And I use this system, I use his coaching to be able to follow the proven process. So I wasn't embarking upon this journey, this uncharted territory by myself. I had a guide along with me who's been there, done that, to the point I got access to funding. So you might have seen this here, but this is the $400K that you can see in physical business funding cards. The rest of it you can't see because they're lines of credit, right? So you can get access to both, whether it's lines of credit or business credit card. And at the end of the day, it's all money, right? People may say, hey, I prefer a line of credit instead of a business credit card. Well, at the end of the day, what is your goal? Is it max funding? Right, so let's say if I owe you $1, right? If I owe you $1, sure, you may prefer for me to repay you that debt in just a crisp single $1 bill. But if I say, hey, friend, I actually got 4 quarters, are you really gonna turn that down? More than likely no, because $1 is $1, right? $1 is $1, same thing. If your goal is to get maximum funding for your business or for your real estate, then whether it comes in the form of a line of credit or come in the form of these, at the end of the day is max funding, and you can leverage it to help you accomplish your goals that you have established for your business or your real estate ventures. And so that's what John helped me do. He helped me from start to finish get funding. So as a result of that help, I was able to get tons of lines of credit, business funding that amasses over $400,000 in limits. And guess what? You can too. All you have to do, as I mentioned in the beginning, is take an assessment, okay? What you need to do is just go to our website to apply to speak with one of our team members. It may be John, and maybe someone else. We've grown since then, but reach out to one of our team members so we can take an assessment as to how you stand today. And you might say, hey, Juan Pablo, I actually do have a legitimate business. I do have the tax returns for my business. I do have a 80 paydesk score. I have a Dun & Bradstreet number and all that stuff. I have my EIN set up. That's great. We can get you funding for corporate credit. But if your goal is maximum funding, we want to see how we can help you with corporate credit that has nothing to do with your personal credit, We want to see what we can do in regard to your local banks that we can tap into, doing foreign file if need be, and also what major banks we can tap into. So we take that three-pronged approach. Then we should be able to work with you to get you the maximum funding you need to accomplish your business and real estate goals. But the first thing you have to do is just check the link below to learn more. And I get it. You might say, hey, Juan Pablo, similar to you, I don't have the squeaky clean credit. In fact, my credit has been ran through the mud. It's not my fault. It could be someone else's fault. I understand that. But at the end of the day, I don't want you to discount yourself. It's like a race. When people get started for a race, what they do when they're at the finish line, they're like this, like you're ready to run. And they're like, okay, before I start this race, let me look to my left. Oh, this guy seems stronger than me. Oh, let me look to my right. Oh, this guy seems faster than me. Oh, maybe I shouldn't run this race because I don't think I'm equipped or I don't think I'm ready. They're already discounting themselves in their mind. But what you want to do is you want to get to the starting line and you want to run the race the best you can. And if you happen to fall short, meaning you don't get the funding you want because you have some blemishes on your credit or whatever, at least you'll receive coaching from someone who's been there, done that, to share with you at no additional cost what's needed to get funded. And when you apply for funding, there is no upfront fees. We provide you with the free consultation. We'll share with you either A, hey, it looks like you can get up to $45,000 to $55,000 in dollars. Or if you do this with your credit, this and this, you can get access to more funding. Or B, well, right now you're not ready, but this is exactly the customized blueprint that you need to embark upon to get funded, all right? So have that winner's mindset. Don't discount yourself right now because of your current state. Work with a coach who's been there, done that, that can hold your hand and train you so that way you can get stronger and walk into any lending institution with your head held high, shoulders back, knowing with full faith and confidence that you get the funding you need for your business or real estate investor or for your real estate investments. All right, guys, as always, this is to your success. Continue to earn passively, learn passively, and hey, make sure you get that massive income to fund your passive income. Take care. Peace.